face.
So for cyclists that are training indoors,
Yep.
compared to cyclists that are training outdoors, what are the different requirements? What are they going to think about?
Okay. I think the problem that we've got to look at is hydration is key. Whatever form of exercise you do, hydration is key. Now, whether your sweat rates change from training indoors or outdoors isn't questionable. It's individual, and I would suggest for most people they're going to sweat more when they're training indoors than they are outdoors. Outdoors, you're moving at much greater speed, so the air movement over the body is much greater. About 70% of the energy that you generate in the muscle to drive the body forward is actually dissipated, it's given off as heat. And the problem is, if we don't have enough air movement over us, we're actually going to be in a situation where the body overheats. And once you get to around about 39.5 degrees, things starts getting critical. And once you're over sort of 41, 42 degrees, almost terminal. So you don't want to get too hot. So that's what happens is the body will start sweating, you produce water on the skin, and air movement around you that happens normally during outdoors exercise, that will evaporate the sweat off the skin, and that will help you cool by shunting blood to the skin and you're then cooling. So clearly as you exercise, you're going to sweat. And those sweat rates are different for each individual, and they're different for different environmental conditions. So as an athlete, what you want to think about is you want to think about measuring your sweat rate or having a much better understanding of your sweat rate for different environmental conditions. So if you're training indoors on the turbo trainer, on the rollers, on your smart trainer on a regular basis, get an understanding of how much you sweat. If the environmental conditions outdoors are different, get an idea of how much you sweat. So if it's a hot sunny day, how much do I sweat? If it's an easy session on a hot sunny day, that's going to be different from an intensity session on a hot sunny day. If it's cold steady winter miles, how much do I sweat there? If I'm doing intervals, hill reps on a cold winter's day, how much do I sweat? Simple tip: get yourself naked, jump on the scales. Now, don't forget to get dressed before you go and train. It could rub. You might get arrested if you go outdoors. You go and do your training session as normal, you come back, you take all your clothes off, you towel yourself down as best as possible, you jump back on the scales. What we're trying to do is we're trying to assess weight before and after exercise, and any decrement in that weight is sweat that you've sweated and you haven't replaced. So it gives you an understanding of what your sweat rates will be. If you measure your fluid intake during the exercise and then we look at your sweat rates, that gives us a really good handle. Every kilogram that you've lost during a training session is a litre of sweat that you haven't replaced. So half a kilo, 500 mils, 0.1 of a kilo, 100 mils. In order to replenish that sweat loss, to get you rehydrated, we need to drink somewhere in the region of about 1.25 to 1.5 times more the weight loss. So if you've lost a litre, you've lost a kilo, you need to drink somewhere in the region of about 1.25 to 1.5 litres post-exercise. Don't just chug it down, it's got to come in slowly over the next half an hour to an hour, but make sure you effectively rehydrate.
And what would you add to those drinks?
Well, I mean, initially, water is great. That's the be all and the end all. We've got to hydrate. We look at our electrolytes, our sodiums, our potassiums, our calciums, potentially our magnesiums. So you start to add things like that. That will make a drink more palatable, and potentially, and contentious research on this as to whether it makes the drink more effective or not, but certainly if it makes it more palatable, or if you're exercising for a long duration, it's going to replenish what you're losing. And then the other thing you consider is carbohydrate. But at this stage, I think the primary factor is to make sure you're hydrating. So make sure that water is coming in at the rate that you're losing it. You don't want to drink excessively if you're not sweating that much, because again, that's just as dangerous. So there's a delicate balance here, and everything's about a balance, and everything's about personal responses to training. So find out what works for you. The bloke next to you might sweat twice as much, you might not sweat at all. So just because he drinks 2 litres an hour doesn't mean that's what you've got to drink, or because you only drink 200 mils an hour, it doesn't mean that's right for you. So find out what's right for you.
So we're in the Northern Hemisphere at the moment here, and it's cold. So a lot of people are training indoors, and Zwift and Trainer are particularly huge. So when people are training indoors and they're doing pretty hard efforts sometimes and they've
Yep.
got pools of sweat on the floor,
Yep.
is that indicative of something? Does that mean they're not cooling enough with fans? Or?
Well, I mean, you're gonna sweat anyway. If you exercise hard, you're gonna sweat. That's a natural response. Now, the size of the pool or the water is different from one person to the next to the next. And some people, some well-trained athletes have huge sweat responses. Others have minimal sweat responses. And everybody is different. There isn't a sweeping statement that says you should drink this much because you sweat that much. It's very, very much an individual thing. However, you want to ensure as best as you possibly can that the room you're exercising in is cooler, and you want to make sure there is good air movement over you. Now again, the one thing that I notice when I'm indoors and training is although I might have a fan coming in front of me, my back gets very, very damp. Now of course when you're out on the road and you're down on the bike, you've actually got the air that follows over you, that follows the curve of your body. So sometimes I actually will put a second fan coming onto the side of me or coming on from behind to actually take some of that water off my back, which again, keeps me that little bit cooler as well. So think about placement of fans, think about how many fans you've got and how hard they're on.